So first off, thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Tim Priest. I'm the director of bands for Fruitport High School. I'm in my 4th year of teaching. The first 3 of them, I taught choir and I taught band, which is a very big transition for me after doing no choir experience. So we're going to talk just kind of through a little bit of my experience and some advice that I would find helpful for those teaching choral music without ever planning on teaching choral music. And at the end, we'll have time for questions, I'm sure. So let's get started. So first off, just a little bit about the choirs that I taught while being the director of choirs. My first year of teaching, 2016 to 17, I taught 3 choirs. I taught a concert choir, which was an anyone can join choir. There was about 60 kids in it that year. And then a chamber ensemble, which was a smaller group of about 25, and a all-women's group, Varsity Voices. And we had one gentleman who couldn't fit choir in his schedule unless he was in Varsity Voices, so he sang the lower alto splits and stuff and sang his falsetto a lot. So this is a picture of my Varsity Voices. This is us at State Choral Festival at Central Michigan University. It was a really good time. It was really great. So our typical concert cycles at Fruitport for choir are still something like this. I have a fall concert where we have just one song we perform. This is a 6 through 12 band and choir concert where everyone just gets to prepare one piece of music so we can really focus on working on fundamentals. And then after that, we start to branch out with more complicated music. We had a winter concert of 3 to 4 songs and solo acts, either small groups or duets, but it was independent of the other music that was going on. So these students would practice and then audition, and then if they were accepted as a soloist or a duet or trio or what have you, they would work with our accompanists and then they would perform at that concert. And then we would have District Festival, which is 2 songs. We're going to talk a little bit more about festival later. The State Festival, that's 3 songs. Spring Pops, which is a very big deal in the choral world, something I did not know about when I started this gig, but it's usually 3 to 5 songs, and then they have a lot of solo acts, and then we have a graduation, which is 1 song. Additional performances include solo and ensemble, and we'd also usually perform at a retirement home, which is just good to get our name out in the community. And then we would also have the musical, which is not tied in with choir, but a lot of my responsibilities tied in with being the vocal coach and things of that nature. So musical was still a large part of my job in this semester. A lot of pitfalls for my first year of teaching. You need aural perception skills and keyboard skills. Those are the ones I was the worst at while at Green Valley. They were the ones that I struggled a lot with, and I vividly remember having the thought of, it's all going to be fine because I'm never going to teach choir, so why would I need this? And then most of my day was actually teaching choir that first year. So it ended up biting me in the butt a little bit, but I learned a lot on the job. Choir kids are very different than band kids, and that's okay, but it was not something that I was expecting to experience. There's just different senses of humor and a little bit different community feel. Again, not a bad community feel, but there is a lot of feelings, at least in the choir setting that I was in. It was something I was not quite prepared for. My humor didn't click with them right away. I like to think of myself as a very funny teacher, as I think most teachers do, and it was not meshing for a long time. I had a lack of experience in the choir setting. I had never done choir. The most choir experience I had was a semester of lab choir while I was here at Green Valley, and we had secondary choral methods, which I think you guys still have now, where we'd have to go teach in either a middle or high school setting for a month, doing 2 observations, a warm-up, and then teaching a little bit of a song. But that was it. The next time that I taught choir was my second round interview at Fruitport for this position, where I had to do a warm-up, and then I had to teach Seasons of Love from Rent. And it clearly went well, because here I am. And then the last thing I had a lack of knowledge was choral repertoire. I barely felt like I knew high school band repertoire, and then when I got this job, I was like, I don't know anything about choir, how to program, how to pick music, where to pick music, what's good, what do kids like, all of those things. So those were all things that I was lacking in that first year. And what I did to handle this is, as soon as I got this job, is I called a ton of people, a lot of choir directors that I knew and did not know, just kind of reached out to anybody who could help me, because I was really, really nervous. I was hired in the end of July. It was July 27th or 8th. We had band camp the Monday after I was hired. I was hired on a Thursday, and then we had about 3 weeks of summer until school started. So I did not have a whole lot of prep time. And they didn't give me my keys till the weekend before school started. So I only could get into school if my middle school colleague was also there for marching band. So it made things difficult to get ready, and I couldn't get in my band room. It was just kind of a mess, or choir room for that matter. I was really upfront with the kids. I told them pretty straightforward that this is really outside of my wheelhouse. I had not done choir before, but what I told them is I promised to work really, really hard to make their experience a really good one. Because for kids, especially music kids who have the same teacher sometimes 5th through 12th grade, change is incredibly scary. And they were not happy to have a new director just because it was someone new. It wasn't the person they were expecting. So I made sure that I let them know on the first day that I was going to work as hard as I could to learn who they are as people, what traditions they've had, and how to make sure that they felt that their year was worthwhile and successful. And I felt pretty good by the end of that year, but boy was I scared. I met with the seniors independently. Like at the end of class, I just went to a different room. I had my accompanist stay with the other kids and watch them and just ask them what they were looking for out of this year and kind of let them know that we were on the same team. And I was not there to change things or to make their lives miserable, but I wanted them to be an active part of their education, which I think made a big difference. I tried a lot of things and I failed quite a bit because I was new. Your first year of teaching is a lot about survival. And I knew that going into it, but I always thought I was going to be surviving in like the world of just band, and all of a sudden I was surviving in band and in choir. And it was a lot of long hours, but it was really worth it. And I became a better musician because of it. I firmly believe that. And I practiced piano and sight singing a lot. I had kind of a keyboard just like this. It was a little tiny plastic one in my apartment that my parents got me when I was 8 years old because I wanted to learn to play piano. Instead of piano lessons, they gave me a tiny keyboard and they gave me a book that said how to play piano, and I gave up after like a week and a half. But I still had it, and I brought it with me when I moved into an apartment, and I would practice chord progressions, I would practice 5-finger scale patterns, all sorts of things, and it made me a better piano player in the long run. A typical rehearsal, we would warm up for about 10 to 20 minutes. We would do physical warm-ups and we would do vocal warm-ups. Physical warm-ups are just like stretches to really kind of just loosen up. A lot of singing is highly dependent of the way that you specifically are holding yourself. Your body is your instrument. When you're an instrumentalist, your instrument is your instrument, which is really nice because I did not consider myself to be a very good singer, and then I got the job and I was really nervous. I'm a flute player. I feel very comfortable playing the flute. It's great. I have lots of runs. I don't really care about that. It's just like, and it's great. But having your body be your instrument, if it's all tense and it's not like awake yet, you are not going to sound as good. You're not going to be as successful. So it's a lot of like wiggle your fingers, shake out your wrists, elbows, arms. I have the kids shake out their legs as long as they weren't kicking their neighbors next to them. We just loosened up. We could stretch a little bit, and I would have this be as much of a silent activity as you can expect from high school students because I want us to get into the performance mindset while we're doing this. Then we would do vocal warm-ups. We do a lot of vocal warm-ups. We're going to go into what those are in a little bit, so I won't stick too much on it. Sight singing. As I became a more experienced teacher, I learned to not do all my sight singing just the month of festival, but I tried to spread it out evenly over the course of the year. So we would try to do 1 to 5 minutes a lot at the beginning of the year. As things kind of ramped up and we got busy, I did less sight singing just because of the other things we had to do. Kids will resist this because it is not fun and it is not interesting, like at face value. They don't understand a lot of the times why it is so important. But you have to make it your job to explain it to them and talk about how not only will sight singing give you a good score at festival, but it'll make you a better musician because you'll be able to see intervals in your music that you'll be able to sing, you'll have rhythmic understanding, all those good things. And then the rest of the hour, between 30 to 45 minutes on a regular day, would be rehearsing your concert music. These are a lot of the warm-ups that I did as a choir teacher. My first year, my accompanist was part-time. So Monday and Wednesday she was with me, and then every other Friday she was with me. The other half of the time she was with the middle school choirs. My second and third year I was really lucky. We ended up getting a full-time accompanist for the middle and the high school. They were both technically part-time, but they were full-time like for the ensembles. We had them every single day. These exercises need to be full engagement of body and voice. Do not allow your ensembles to get complacent because this is your bread and butter of being a choir teacher. This develops tone, it works on diction, it works on vowel shape. It is a lot of the things you're going to spend time fixing in your pieces right here. And if you can fix it beforehand so that the kids just intuitively do this, it's going to fix a lot of things. Just like if your kids know their scales for their band, they're going to be a lot more accurate while playing pieces or sight reading pieces. Yep, this is your bread and butter. The most growth can come from these warm-ups. So this is just a long list of warm-ups. I'm going to show some of them. I'm not going to do necessarily all of them. My biggest thing for me, especially that first year, was finding warm-ups that I could play. because I, like I said, was not a very gifted piano player, so I did a lot of Alberti bass, boom, chick, things like that. So just going through this list, there's this do, re, do. It's just bopping through the scale. Do, re, mi, re, do. And then we do it with intervals. Do, re, do, mi, do, fa, do. This exercise is great because it teaches intervals as well as solidifying solfege. I used movable do as a choir director. Some people use fixed do, but what that means is whatever the first note of that scale is our do. So we would do it, and we would modulate up and we would modulate down to help stretch the range. Me, mi, ma, mo, mu is one that I did for vowels. Me, mi, ma, mo, mu, and making the kids sometimes look in a mirror to really just look at the different vowel shapes that exist. Beat by B and sing E are two different, more sing-songy ones that we would sing. That one I would do more when I'd have my own accompanist with me because there was a intense background piano part that she would play. Hubba Bubba Double Bubble Gum is one that we would sing progressively faster and faster to work on spitting out those words. That was just a 5-finger pattern. Lay, li, la, lo, lu is very much like me, mi, ma, mo, mu. 5-finger patterns in general. A lot of do, re, mi, fa, so, fa, mi, re, do. You can do intervals, do, mi, sol, mi, do, so, fa, mi, re, do, whatever you need to do. You can also do it in minor keys. You can kind of mess around with that. Do a Deer from Sound of Music. The Chain is a song by Ingrid Michaelson. The ending has a nice round in it. Hello Sun is a piece of music that I transcribed from listening to a YouTube video. Loch Lomond and Auld Lang Syne are traditional folk tunes that have the same chord progression. We would learn them separately, and then we would add them together and have half the group sing one, half the group sing the other. Sirens, which is where you go from either the bottom or top of your range, and you go Z, and then you would go up and down, or Z, making a smooth transition between them. Throw Catch is a song, Yoop is a song. The soprano warm-up, as we call it, is just between a minor third getting higher and higher, and you bounce the group back and forward for range extensions. Canoe Song is a song. Many Mumbling Mice is a minor tune with a little bit of a story behind it. Many Mumbling Mice are making midnight music in the moonlight, mighty nice. And then there's in the verse about 7 slithering snakes, are sipping cider in the sunset. Good for diction. Kids like it, they think it's funny. La Ti Do Re teaches minor intervals. It is a La-based minor, meaning that you are not starting with Do and going Do, Re, Me, but instead going La, Ti, Do. So La is actually the first note of that scale. The Little Mermaid is modulating through. The Oreo warm-up. Angela, did we do this with you? The Oreo song? Wonder if I gave... It was a jingle for Oreos a while back, and I transcribed it out. I listened to it a bunch. I wrote it out for a choral warm-up. I had a lot of fifths and octaves. It was really cool. My Bonnie Lies Over the Ocean. Kids really like this one because every time that you sing a B, you're supposed to sit down or stand up. So it's my Bonnie lies over the ocean. My Bonnie lies over the sea. And there's a part at the end with lots of B's, so kids at the end are going down, up, and then they laugh and they think it's funny. But it's just good when you get them moving. That's a good physical warm-up. Lip trills, that is going like and going up and down scales, which requires a lot of fast air. And then just taking these warm-ups and doing them on neutral syllables like ooh or la or ah, whatever you want to do. Change your dynamics. Bop them, meaning you hit just the initial attack of it, and then singing phrases backwards. Just be creative. If you do the same thing every single day and you're bored by it, they're going to be bored by it. So a lot of what I would do is I would start in either C or F, and like for, let's say Do a Deer, it would just be Do a deer, a female deer, and then you'd go up for Ray, a drop of golden sun, all the way up, all the way down. An easy piano part for me to play whenever I did not have my accompanist there. A lot of it would just be Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, fa, mi, re, do. You go up or you go down because you want to stretch the sopranos up, but you also want to make sure that those altos or those gentlemen are also getting the lower range that they need as well. But you could do, or pick up a series of patterns so that you're not just stuck doing the same thing over and over and over again. You can also have speed contests to see how accurately kids can sing them quickly, or you can really slow it down and make them these nice chorales. A lot of these song ones, I would try to pick ones that either had a simple accompaniment or would be something that we could sing a cappella. A cappella is a great skill for students to have because it's really trusting their inner ear. And I would have kids sing in different groups. I would have kids sing in just their sections, or I would isolate them so that they were not just relying on their neighbors, but really relying on their ear. Some examples of the songs with easy accompaniment The chain is really easy because it's literally right hand stays the same, you just go down, and then the kids sing over the top of it. It's usually a good 3-part round. La ti do re can be sung as a round. It is just la ti do re intervals, and then every third of the song, a new group would enter. So you would have these nice chords that the kids really like singing. My kids, they called it going to church. Angela, I think we did this when you were there. There was a front area where kids could enter the school by the gym foyer, which was incredibly echoey. And they like sometimes warming up in there because everything just echoed. And when you sang those nice lush chords, they really just like soared. So these are a lot of warm-ups I did. I did not do every single one of these every single day. I did not do every one of these every single year. Kind of did based on the group. Some get really jazzed about singing some of them, and some are just like, this one is a stinker. So it just kind of depends. Things that you don't have to worry about in band. The biggest one are the lyrics and the words. You don't have lyrics and words in band for the most part. You are really lucky to just worry about listening, balancing, blending, making sure you're playing in tune, making sure your fingers are moving quickly, making sure your face is not super fatigued. But in here you have lyrics and words, how you pronounce them, spitting those words out, good diction, the vowel shape. The and the are pronounced differently depending on if it is followed by a consonant word or a vowel word. Ending consonants, meaning like if it ends with a nice T, you end that word by really emphasizing the like 10, and you have to really spit those out. And it feels so weird, it feels so foreign, but it makes a big difference when you're performing. Fricatives is the beginning consonant of a word. So my last year teaching choir, which was last year, we had a song that started with the word come listen. So it would be come listen. You had to really spit out that. And the kids are felt like so weird for so long. The kids are so self-conscious because they're all going through puberty and they're freshmen who don't know like any of these people. And it takes a lot to make them feel safe and get them comfortable with all this. Diphthongs and triphthongs, which is when you say a bunch of different vowels at the same time, like E and U for E. It's a bunch of different things for blend and pronouncing different words from either different languages or just the way that the composer intended them. And syllabic stress and word emphasis. This is a big one that I struggle with all the time, where you have to put different levels of stress at different words. So we did a song last year called Omnia Soul by Z. Randall Stroop, really great composer for younger groups who writes some advanced stuff as well, which his opening statement was, somewhere far from nowhere, I grew both strong and tall. And I had a choir director who had retired come in to work with my kids, and he's like, no. He's like, it's gotta be somewhere far from nowhere, I grew both strong and tall. And we just did like that sentence for a long time, making sure that we really emphasize the words that are important. He called them power words, the words that really portray the meaning behind the text, which is really cool. It was something I didn't ever have to worry about until I started teaching choir. Use what you know is such a big thing. You are all, like if you get that job, like you are just so happy to be there, but you are a good musician. You would not have graduated from a university if you were not a good musician, because there's so many hoops that you have to jump through. It can be exhausting. But the nice thing about that, especially for Grand Valley, I felt really prepared to go and teach, even though like I didn't specifically think I was going to teach choir. But you know what sounds good and what sounds bad. Like if a group sounds bad, you are going to be very, very aware of it. So you have to just kind of start from scratch and be like, okay, what sounds so rough? Is it their tone? Is it their rhythm? Is it the way that they're pronouncing the words? Is it that they can't sing that high with good sound? Is it that they are tone deaf? Figuring out what exactly is wrong. Routines are such a big one. Establishing classroom norms and routines for them to come in and know exactly what to do from the beginning of the day. So when they come in, they know to go get their binders from the back closet and then bring out their stuff and get in their seats. Know that we are gonna start with stretching and then we're gonna move into a vocal warm-up. Or know you're gonna start with an announcement every day. A friend of mine always plays a 2-minute song while they're getting ready, and they know at the end of that 2-minute song, if they're not in their seats, they're marked tardy, because class is gonna start regardless if they're there or not. Air is everything in choir and band. Like if you do not have good air support, you are gonna not be in tune, you're not gonna have a good tone, you're not gonna have all this. So I did breathing gym, which is what I use a lot with my marching band. It worked well for us. Score study, you know how to score study, and the nice thing about choir is instead of 20 some lines for band, you'll have somewhere between 1 to like 5 or 6 for high school, depending on where you're teaching. A lot of the time I had 3 or 4, which is really easy because they're all pitched in C, and like a lot of the time they have similar motion, especially in easier songs. My top groups would sing more complicated things, required a little bit more score study. The thing I studied more was the piano because of what I was playing, but understanding what the challenges are going to be while teaching the piece, or what is a good place to start because it's easy success. Rubrics help to center your focus. MSVMA has a rubric for festival, just like MSBOA does, looking at that so you know like what boxes you need to check off early. Relationship building is always important no matter what you're teaching. Those kids need to know that you care about them. They need to know that you value who they are and you want them to succeed, and this is not just all about you. And you have to be very genuine, because if you're not, kids can see right through that. Speaking from the heart, making sure, like I would get super geeked out about all sorts of stuff, and it would be a lot of things that like not every kid would care about. But if you are bored, or like you're trying to show you're too cool for school while you're teaching this subject, you're never going to reach that audience. I remember I would get goosebumps. A friend of mine came into clinic, our choirs, and she spoke with like such passion that I was like, oh my gosh, like why didn't I do choir when I was younger? I wish I would have had like this fire underneath me then. And it reminded me that if she can do that to me, a man who has the job that she is also doing, then I need to do this for these kids so I can inspire their love of music. And not every kid is going to go into music education, but they need an environment where they feel safe, and they need a place where they feel like they can have an outlet. And that's what a lot of choir is. There's a really good book called Teaching Middle School Band, I forget the author, but it has a section called like the different kind of kids in band. It's the same type of thing with choir. You'll have the kids who are there because music is their number one priority. You have the kids there who are there because their friends are there. You have the kids who have nowhere else to go. So you need to like be able to reach all these different avenues for kids and get them on your side. And then I wrote there are plenty of band pieces inspired by choral pieces. A good example of this is Frank Kelly wrote Earth Song, which is a piece he wrote for choir first and then wrote to a band transcription. My second year of teaching, my lower group at the high school did Earth Song for festival, and my top choir did the a cappella version for choir festival. So I knew that piece really, really well because I had both things like at my disposal. And my band benefited because I knew the text of the choir piece. My choir benefited because I knew the piece really well, so I knew if we were not in tune, if we were not doing phrasing the way I wanted it. It was really good. Eric Whitaker also writes a lot of both. The beginning of your year is a lot of assessment, finding what the strengths and weaknesses are of your groups. The beginning of the year was really stressful my first year because I had a concert about 4.5 weeks after school started. So not only did I have to figure out who all these kids were, I had to learn how to teach choir and play piano better. I had to fit them all for uniforms, but I also had to prepare a concert and I had never picked like choir repertoire before. So I picked stuff that was way too hard and stuff that was way too easy. And I remember we like threw pieces out because I was like, nope, we can't do this. I'm so sorry, I made a huge mistake. So it's just figuring that out. That's why we switched to our fall concert with one song, so we had time to prep everything for success for the year. Getting them all on the same page, reading music. A lot of kids don't know how to read music in band and choir, and they just fake it so much. So you have to get them on the same page. We did a lot of different activities to make them understand how to read music notation, how to like read just rhythm on its own without having to rely on the words. Kids learn by rote because it's easier. And it is really hard because it's easy to teach by rote. But I made it like my mission to not do that as much as I could. You're always going to teach it at some point. Especially like festival season, there's some hard licks. And I'm like, we are not going to read this music, but we need to make sure we understand this. So I would try to connect it in different ways of how it fits with other parts, listening for the piano, but I made sure it was not just rote for the sake of teaching by rote. Music theory, doing a lot of music theory with both my band and my choirs, understanding how to read the keys, know what key that you are in, understanding what sharp, flats, naturals mean, all those good things. We did tons of music theory stuff. And I would do a test at the beginning of the year that was the same as my exam so that they knew kind of where their shortcomings were, and then by the end of the semester they were able to see how much they grew because they have that first test in their hand as well. And making sure they have the same reading syllables for solfege and rhythm. You can do solfege a bunch of different ways. Fixed or movable do. You can do it with numbers instead of solfege in general. It doesn't really matter, you just gotta pick something you like and stick with it. And then rhythm, you can count in so many different ways. Those of you that have oral perception, like all the way through RL 3 and 4, know that there's a ton of different counting methods. The counting method that I used was the one that they already had for choir when I got there, because I was not ready to like revolutionize their counting system in 1 year, because number one, small incremental change over time is a really good way when you step into a new position, because if you change everything at once, the kids are not going to be happy about that. So just making sure all of my kids could do it the same way. Classroom expectations for the year, and a rundown of the year, just making sure they understand like why you are in that group. And especially like for my select choirs, I made sure that they understood that yes, we are in choir, yes, we are here to get to know each other and have a good time, but like we are here to achieve excellence all of the time. And we had a really, really, really good time making quality music. Learning your warm-ups, making sure these kids know them the right way from the beginning. Don't do all your warm-ups on the same day. Like do 1 or 2 at the beginning as you really get them to sing with good sound, match each other for vowels and consonants, and all those other good things. But making sure that that is a large part of your beginning process. So I started always with a simple unison or 2-part song just to get them singing together. Sometimes it was a pop song, sometimes it was a song from Broadway. One year, my favorite one we did Falling Slowly. What is that musical? Once, from the movie Once, that got turned into a Broadway show. But it is a duet between a man and a woman. And it worked really well because I did SATB choir that year, and so my sopranos and basses sang the gentleman's line, soprano altos sang the women's line. It was good for just matching across because it wasn't too extensive. It didn't require a whole lot of thought. And they enjoyed it a lot because it sounded really great and it was easy for them to learn. And the last one is Introduction to Concert Music and figuring out what they like. I did a Music Monday. Was it called the Tune Tuesday one year, just because we did it on Tuesdays because I didn't have an accompanist on Monday. But it was just showing them different composers and pieces to find out what they liked and why. So that when I picked music, I wasn't picking things that they were gonna hate for a whole 3 to 4 months. Rehearsal strategies. I did a lot of sectionals, especially after my first year. It would either be myself or it would be the accompanist. If we broke up into more small groups, I would have a student leader do it. I would record on the piano their vocal lines, or I would sing it depending on like what I was feeling for the piece, and then it would be put into Google Classroom, and then they would go off with a specific goal in mind, and we would come back together to fit it all in. But it was really good because while teaching these different parts, kids get bored so easy. It happens in band as well, so it was a good way to keep them engaged the whole time and then bring them in. Circle rehearsal, have them stand in a circle just like you could do with a band. Bopping, which is where you just sing the initial attack of the note. It's really good for having kids learn rhythms with half notes and whole notes, because kids always want to blow right through them. Or if there's a lot of syncopation, making sure that they come in exactly at the right spot. Singing the line backwards, I would do this with short phrases where they would sing it forward and then they would sing either the solfege or words backward. And it's harder because you're reversing a lot of the interval orders. And it would just get them to think a little bit more. Singing sections in solfege and then singing them on a neutral syllable. So after you have done them in solfege, you can have them singing on an oo or a la or an ah, and it just forces them to think a little bit more. But what's nice about the solfege is if you are teaching it well in your warm-ups or whatever activity you're doing to get them there, it starts to create those intervals. They start to audiate a lot better. And so when they do the oos, they have to really think about the audiation skills that they already have. Move the sections around the room, have them sing in pods. So put one person in each part in a pod and have them stand over there, have another pod stand over there, over there, over there, and have them sing that way. So that way they're really forced to think about what their individual part is. Sing in the mirror, which is good for looking at like how you are singing. You have to really exaggerate when you are singing to portray exactly what you're saying, or else it sounds very mushy. And then reflecting on the meaning of the pieces. What is kind of nice about doing this, and I mean, I really like it, I've done it a couple of times, is when you analyze the lyrics, you can sometimes reach a new audience of your students. So those who like really enjoy poetry, those in your concert choir who maybe are not as strong as singers and are there for the social experience. They might enjoy doing artwork of a piece. They might enjoy being able to tell a story, but it just reaches a different audience and it helps bring you guys to a newer meaning, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, I associate this memory with this piece of music. And it makes it more emotional. And you have to emote so much, both with your face and the way that you say all the words when you are singing. Concert programming. Pick what you like, first of all. I really struggled with this for a long time because I did not know choir music. And when I started to listen to it, the stuff I really, really liked was like collegiate level or professional level music, because that's what most people know. And I talked about this in a different presentation I gave about picking repertoire a couple years ago for NAFME, is when you are in college, you learn about the stuff that like your wind ensemble is playing at Grand Valley, or you learn about the best symphonies in the world. You don't learn about like grade half to grade 3 music. And that's part of the challenge, and that's kind of part of the fun. I really enjoy programming, so I listen all the time. Whenever I have downtime, or if I'm like cleaning my house, or if I'm grading, I will just put JW Pepper on in the background, go through the new releases, and just find things that I like. Or there is a choir director page where people ask all the time for different ideas for different concert cycles. Finding stuff that people post a lot and listen to that is a good way to do that. Make sure you create variety. Don't just pick the same composer every concert cycle. Don't just pick all slow music. Don't just pick all fast music. Don't just pick things that have the same topic matter. Make sure that it is different, because some kids will hate one thing and love another, or they'll become really used to one style of music and then it won't be as exciting for them anymore. Use pieces to strengthen concepts. And what I mean by that is, don't say, okay, like, I want my choir to learn how to sing in 6/8. I'm gonna give them this piece and that's how they're gonna learn in 6/8. You wanna teach them 6/8 like a month leading into this, and then use that piece to really solidify their knowledge base. I do that with band as well. I like to plan my spring concert as much as you can in your head ahead of time, and then from the beginning of the year, know what skills those kids are gonna need to hit certain objectives. Things change throughout the year, but if you plan backward to the beginning of the year, I find it to be more successful. Plan with the end in mind as much as you can the first year. Your first year is hard to plan because, like I said, you're surviving. But if you can just sit down like once a week to think about what you want in a month, or even like by the end of the week, it's gonna help you be more successful. And just be true to yourself. I struggled with that a lot because a lot of the stuff that some of my choir kids liked, I found very corny. There's a lot of like American folk tunes that have really simple melodies and really like funny or cheesy words, and it was not a part of my personality. And I had to like, not force is a bad word, but I had to kind of dive headfirst into the pool of choral music and really find the things that I liked. There's things that my kids like that I necessarily didn't, but I knew that it was good for them to do. And there's some stuff that I found very important that maybe they did not find the best. But if you can't sell it, like, no one's gonna buy into it. So you just gotta make sure you're true to yourself and you're really passionate about what you're teaching. Because if you're not, too bad, so sad for that concert program. An example of some programming I did, this was, I think, the year you did choir, Angela? Yeah. So this was my second year of teaching. I did 5 pieces for this Christmas concert. This was an SATB group. It was the first year and only year I did an SATB group because we had 10 boys, which was a lot for Fruitport at that time. We did a piece called December Rose. It's based on the Lo How the Rose is Blooming, which is an old Irish song. It had a violin solo in it where I had a flute player from my wind ensemble play that solo. It was really slow. It had really lush chords. It had a beautiful piano part, and it was not too difficult. One of the things I really enjoyed with it is it had a chorus, meaning that if we learned the chorus right away, we learned about 2/3 of that song because it kept coming back to that chorus. And it was really beautiful. African Noel by Victor Johnson. Victor Johnson writes a lot of music, whether it's an arrangement or an original composition. This is a upbeat song with a lot of percussion parts, but it was also a cappella with high energy. So it had kind of like a different flavor to it. And I did not think that they were gonna like it, and a lot of students really, really enjoyed this. I did Glow by Eric Whitaker, and just kids love Eric Whitaker. Like, almost no matter what. It's so funny. Band kids, choir kids, orchestra, like, they just all love Eric Whitaker. He is very present in social media. He has a YouTube platform where he will do a virtual choir, which is really cool to show the kids. He is very active on Twitter. He, I think, is one of those people who have a blog. Like, there's so many resources for him. This is a very slow and beautiful piece, but this one was more challenging. It had a lot of crunchy chords because Eric Whitaker likes to do stuff with seconds in it or ninths, and it's just a lot of crunch and release. And it's really great, and the kids really like it. It had more parts than some of the other songs we did, and it was our challenging piece. I did a song called I Want to Stare at My Phone With You, a millennial holiday song. It was a jazzy tune, it was newer, and it had a lot of funny lyrics, because it was literally all about, like, whenever you hang out with people, all you're doing is staring at your phone. And it, like, starts off as if they're singing to, like, the love of their life, and then it ends with, I want to stare at my phone with you. It was really fun. And what's cool is I post my recordings on our YouTube channel, and the composer of that piece commented on it and talked about, like, how the kids did a great job. So that was really cool to show the kids. They were excited because it was like, oh my gosh, the person who wrote this piece actually, like, saw us perform it. I was not expecting it. I didn't reach out to him at all. He just must search YouTube for his songs to find reference recordings, or to find recordings he could use for reference when he sells the piece. And the last one we did was Silent Night, which is one we did with all of our choirs. There is quite a divide between our concert choir and our select groups, just because we are growing as a music program, whether it be band and choir. We had a lot of turnover for choral directors. I think I was the 4th or 5th choir director in like 6 or 7 years. So it's hard to build a program without consistency. So we picked a song that people knew. We knew singing a cappella was a good skill that the concert choir needed to start doing as they prepared to sing in like their festival cycle. And the varsity voices kind of laid the foundation. We learned this in varsity in probably like a day and a half. Like it was really, really quick. And then we sang with concert, and they felt very cool because they were singing an a cappella piece. A lot of kids just like this tune, and the varsity voices didn't have to lose a lot of rehearsal time learning this song. So this is just one of our concert cycles that we did. But there was a lot of different things happening in it that kept it interesting. We didn't just sing the same type of music over and over again. Solo and ensemble is different for choir than it is for band, at least in Michigan. I don't know how it works everywhere. This is just based on my experience. You do only 2 pieces for district festival. You do 1 free selection, and you do one off of a basic music list. The basic music list has it broken down either by voice typing, or it is broken down by the level, either primary, intermediate, or advanced. Depending on what type of song you choose from the list, chooses how difficult your sight singing is going to be. So this is different for band because you are placed based on your school size for your band festival. So like we are a Class B school at Fruitport. My wind ensemble is a B school. My lower group is a D school because you go down up to 2 levels for your secondary group. But for choir, you get to pick based on your choir's ability level, which is really cool. So we usually did intermediate for any of my select groups, and we were pretty successful with that. And you need, I'm talking about solo and ensemble. Let me backtrack. My bad. I was talking about festival. Same thing applies. Basic music list, 3 different levels. Your student gets to pick. There's sight singing only at the state level, and then the big difference is instead of 1 copy of originals, you need 2, 1 for the judge and 1 for your piano player, or else you will not be able to be eligible for a score. But yeah, very similar. We're going to talk about festival next, which I kind of already did. My bad. Festival for district, you choose 2 pieces, which I just kind of talked about. 1 free choice, 1 piece off the basic music list. Sight singing, primary, intermediate, advanced, depending on your list piece. Something I just went over. And then at state, you switch to going to 3 pieces. 1 piece off the basic music list, 1 free choice, and 1 a cappella piece. There is a loophole where your piece off the basic music list can also be a cappella. So I did that my 2nd year. Earth Song by Tekeli was both a cappella piece and off the list. So I got to choose 2 free choices of whatever I wanted, which was nice because it allowed me to really pick the strengths of my choir or the weaknesses I wanted to fix and work toward that. Both of these have a clinic, which is really nice. Your district festival one happens on stage in front of an audience. Your state festival one happens in another room, and it's a little bit longer because you don't have that sight singing component. There's a rubric for MSBOA. For MSBOA. Which shows you the different points that you need to get based on what they're doing in the different categories. So they rate you on tone, on pitch, on rhythm, on diction, and interpretation, on presentation. And you get a point value of 1 to 5 for each of these things. And in each of the rubrics, it tells you what separates it from a 1 point, a 2 point, a 3 point, etc. Unlike in band, which gives you a rating of 1, or A, B, C, D, E, F, G, etc., etc., this gives you a point value, and you don't end necessarily with like a 1, 2, 3, or 4, or 5 to go to state, but instead you get a point total, and I think it was a 96 out of 120 you needed to go to state, and then you would get your rating of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But you also, there's no points in band festival. You just get a letter rating which corresponds to a 1 through 5. In choir, you get points, and then they give you a rating after the fact. Let's see if I can get back. There we go. Sight singing is also different than it is in band. You get 20 minutes to do all of the sight singing. So instead of the 5 minutes to do your 1 band piece, you come in and you divide up the time yourself. You are allowed to warm the group up if you want with some interval stuff, but it's before you look at the sight singing. So you can do some like do, mi, so, mi, dos, or you could do like fourths. You could do do, mi, re, fa, mi, so, whatever you want to do in order to like get them in sight singing mode. I usually skip that step, but you can't do it once you've looked at the book. Like once you know what it is, they don't want you to like spoon feed it to your kids. So after you're in there and you're all warmed up and they set up the way they want to in it, you have to first divide up the time for rhythm, and then there's a unison solfege that have the same rhythm as that first exercise, and then a two-part exercise, and then either an SSA, SATB, SAB, TTBB, whatever it is the last round of it. Kids can work in a team of maximum of 3. You have to ask them a series of questions to get them where they need to be. So for example, you cannot say yes or no, but you can say, what key are we in? How do you know that? Do we all agree? And then if you've trained your kids, they're the ones who help monitor that, making sure that you're starting on the right pitch. Because you don't always start on do for these exercises. Sometimes you start at mi or fa or sol, what have you. And your kids need to know that. And then you can give them starting pitches, but they have to be the ones who dictate what those notes are. And then you have to use that 20 minutes however you see fit. I would usually use the least amount of time here, and then the most amount of time here because it's the most amount of split parts. So I would try to give them only like a minute or 2 for rhythm. Unison solfege you wouldn't spend too much time on, and then the chunk of this happens right here. Small group work like I talked about, and can give starting pitches as many times as you want. It was very different for me as a band director going into that choir setting. It was just, I'm like, wait, what about that 5 minutes and then you just go? It's a lot of time, and you have to be very smart about it and not get stuck in quicksand. Leadership, I thought it was very important to have a leadership team, especially in my concert choir my first year. You can also assign section leaders or have a whole leadership team, and what they need is they need clear goals, visions, they need boundaries, they need responsibilities, and they want to take ownership of that program. Boundaries is a big one because some people think the leadership team is the one who gets to boss everyone around and yell at people to shut up and do all those good things. And that creates a really toxic environment, so you don't want to do that. So this is what I posted in my packet my first year of teaching. I did not do this packet my second or third year because I was only teaching select groups, so at that point I was doing predominantly either section leaders or students who filled the role of section leaders without a title. So I wrote, hello, by picking up this packet, you consider yourself to be an individual who holds choral music close to their heart, treats everyone within the classroom with respect, and can act as an agent of change in our classroom community. Regardless of if you are placed into the leadership team, you have already committed to being a leader in this classroom because you hold these values to be true. If you are not placed this year, I encourage you to apply again in the future. Decisions are made based on the answers in this packet, but also by behaviors observed both inside and outside of the classroom. Below is a quote by educator Rita Pearson. I want this to be our mantra throughout the rest of this year. It says, I am somebody. I was somebody when I came, I'll be a better somebody when I leave. I am powerful and I am strong. I deserve the education that I get here, and I have things to do, people to impress, and places to go. With this in mind, please take some time to fill out this application. There's no length requirement or right answers. Be true to who you are, and please put your thoughts into your answers. Giving the kids an opportunity to show you why they are so passionate about this classroom environment. My first year, I did not like everyone on it, especially based on this whole inside and outside of the classroom. I waited about a month to 2 months to do this leadership team because I wanted to know the kids before I just put anybody in it based on like answers. Because anyone can put answers on paper, but you need to lead and show exactly why you deserve to be on it. It was very successful. I didn't end up teaching concert choir the next couple of years, but it was really beneficial for that group at that time. Technology, I use Google Classroom a lot. The tabs that I had open all the time for it were logistical materials, meaning your handbook. I think it was really important to have a handbook because it outlines not only the schedule, the expectations, the uniform, but it just shows them that like this is a serious thing. This is not a fly by the seat of your pants class. This is not a 1 year and you're done with it. Like we mean business, we are a community. This is what we expect from you who want to be a part of this community. Have the parents sign it, have the kids sign it. It helps hold them accountable if they try to get out of things for work or leave on a vacation on, like, say, festival, which is happening this year in my band, despite having a handbook. But it allows you to kind of have a leg to stand on. Sectional recordings, sheet music. This way kids can practice at home, even if they forget their music at school. Reference recordings of great groups performing the pieces of music you have. Because you can just Google anything and find a recording, but it does not mean it is a good one. So giving the kids exactly what you want. Concert performance recordings, I have a YouTube channel with all of our recordings on it. It is a private channel. It is used for educational purposes only, because due to copyright, you can't just buy anything on the internet. So it is for only kids in the group to use for educational purposes. And then again, any additional assignments. If you're sick, like it's really easy to throw something in Google Classroom that the kids can do and turn in right then and there. Keeps things paperless, makes things easier for you if you're already at home and you know you're not going to be at school the next day. And then I had a couple Bluetooth speakers that I bought along the way for sectionals, so kids had something to use that was louder than their Chromebooks. Resources, some of these are for band, some of these are for choir, but they work for both. Teaching Rhythm Logically is done by Darcy Williams. She is a band director in a middle school in Texas. They have a podcast called After Sectionals, which just talks about everything band, which is how I found out about her and her colleagues. But she did a Teaching Rhythm Logically book that has a bunch of different exercises that start with quarter notes and quarter note rest and works all the way up to more complicated rhythms. Doing 1 or 2 lines of those a day at the beginning of class was really easy to kind of create that foundation and build upon it so that kids were all on the same page, both with syllables and just with understanding the rhythm in general. Old festival sight singing books, those books that you use in the sight reading room, they sell or get rid of at the end of the year. I had a big stack of them that I would use for practice. There's a good book called Singers, Zingers, and Humdingers, Choral Conductors, Do's and Don'ts by Robert Oster. He is a Michigan educator. He is an MSVMA judge, and he works with local groups. So he came in a couple years to work with me and gifted me that book, which was very, very nice of him. MSVMA will help pay for clinicians off of their list. They have a list of approved clinicians, which they will reimburse whatever their rate is. Usually it's around $100, and then like some mileage. But there's also a cap. Like if they're gonna charge $1,000, they're not gonna pay for all $1,000. But if they're on that list, they go by the MSVMA rate. Observe schools in the area and ask questions. I went to a bunch of concerts of groups in my area that I thought were very good. I went to festival and stayed at festival all day to gather materials. There's conferences such as the Michigan Music Conference or MMC. There is a I'm a Choir Director Facebook group, which has a lot of people posting questions and supplying resources or just posting things that they found successful. And YouTube, which again is good or bad depending on who you are. Kids, they just find things and they listen. But you as an intelligent, educated, musically educated human being can find the good and the bad from that. And I would go down the choral rabbit hole of having it go on autoplay, and it would go to the next piece and the next piece and the next piece. And it was a good way to find music that I liked or composers I liked. And then some end of year projects. One year I did an a cappella project where I let the kids create groups to find and learn a cappella pieces and perform them for the class. A lot of kids would find things on MuseScore or Pentatonics has a lot of stuff that's accessible for students to find online, and they would learn it, and at the end of the year, they would perform it for each other. So it wasn't clean, it wasn't polished, but some groups did really, really well. Trying new music, stuff that you were on the fence about, seeing if kids are gonna like it. Like I remember I did Lacrimosa by Mozart, and I was like, I do not think that these kids are gonna like it. It's in Latin, like blah, blah, blah. And they loved it. Like it was super cool, and I would never have known that, but it was nice because it was a low stake environment for me to try it. Create a concert, you can do this for any concert cycle. It was an assignment I put in Google Classroom. Give kids parameters of like how you program a concert and have them find things. That's how I ended up doing the a cappella piece I did last year for festival with my choir. There's a piece called As the Earth Stands Still. And I had never heard of this piece before, but one of my students put it in her create a concert. And so I was able to find that, and I liked it a lot. We ended up doing it. She felt really empowered because like her choir director picked the piece of music that she suggested. The 30-day song challenge is a fun one. This one is either more pop-based or it can be strictly choral-based, but there is a ton of things online that are like, on the first day of the month, pick a song, your favorite song with a color in it. Pick a song that makes you happy. Pick a song that reminds you of your best friend. And you can create those parameters to be anything, or you can say it has to be off J.W. Pepper, it has to be a song that you have performed while you were in fruitport choirs, whatever you want, and then have kids create a PowerPoint and then share that stuff with each other at the end of the year. It allows them to see each other's taste, and especially for the ones about like what makes you happy, what makes you sad, it kind of allows them to be vulnerable in a safe environment and feel more connected to each other. There's always lots of hugging, like, which is great. If you've created that safe haven for those kids, like they're there to support each other, and it's super cool to see. The musical research project, my kids really liked musicals one year. I talked a little bit about how I did a Music Monday with different composers. One year we did all musicals. So I had kids research musicals we did not do and present that to the class, or just turn them in a Google Classroom, depending on how much time you had. Or like relearn old favorites. Like you're always gonna be like, oh, this piece was my favorite always, and they'll ask you to do it all the time. So we would sometimes relearn old favorites. Kind of depends on how much free time you have at the end of the year. It's different all the time. I didn't do all these things every year. It's just kind of a collection of things I've done over the years.